Hi Retro Friends, and welcome to the first installment of the Pixitron development vlog. Today we're going to be covering a tutorial on how to get started with Pixitron and a little bit of background information regarding the project. So I'm working on a game with a guy named Bill, and I am Retro Friend Herb. He's Retro Friend Bill. He's not with us today, but he may occasionally be on our streams. We're going to create a situation where Pixitron and another project called Pixie PHP are going to coalesce into a game engine. We need this game engine to build a game that we're making, and some of the engine will be exposed through the open source so that you can use it. Pixitron will take advantage of the Electron framework and build environment, which builds a Chromium embedded framework browser on systems and then uses a portable version of Node.js to run JavaScript in the back end. This allows us to create games, especially if you include something like Pixie JS. I picked Pixie JS because Pixie is a very cool engine and it requires you to build upon it rather than it being built already. Although it does have some infrastructure, it's not required that you follow it. And in addition to that, for Pixie PHP, we'll be using a framework called Page. So let me bring these things up and show you where they are on GitHub so we can get started. All right, here we are in Chrome. And this is in dashing 4K for those who are interested. So I'm going to bop over to github.com/herb H3RB. And this is me when I was 23. You'll see me in the other Retro Friends videos. And the actual place where Pixitron lives is LA Game Studio, which is the Lost Astronaut Game Studio. We're also on Steam. Please check us out and buy our games. Also, if you want to support these vlogs, you can visit our Patreon for Retro Friends or support it by paying Lost Astronaut Studios for its games. Any support you want to offer would be greatly appreciated. All right, so this is the Pixitron Engine's repo on GitHub, and you can clone or download it. And then located in the repository is just a really basic starting place. It's not quite a project beyond that yet. What does it have? It has empty files that are already tied into one another for rendering, drawing, collecting information from the interface, getting some engine information ready to be extended into a real engine. And we've got the package information and all of its dependencies. But before you go and download this, you're going to have to go to electronjs.org. So let's bop over there. So this is the Electron website. And on this page, you've got releases as a link up here. And you can download the various Electron releases. I happen to have the Atom browser, or Atom IDE, the Atom editor, and this is what I'm going to be using to develop my Electron application. So in here, I've already actually got a copy of Pixitron set up and working. So let me just show you around here. I'm actually going to, so this just lets me edit the Electron source code. And the source code is very similar to running a Node app or a website. So it's all written in JavaScript, and there's even an index.html, which I think in this case is our front door, if you will, to the game engine. So the index.html is going to include Pixie engine, Pixie JS, and we're using version 4. There's, I think, a couple of updates after that, but we've got version 4 set up in here. And this is, in its entirety, this project is a quick start for Electron.js. So To build Electron, there's some command line stuff that has to happen. But once it's built, you can see it in a browser window that is an Electron browser window. All right, so let's get over to Electron and let's locate a build here. So it looks like we were using Electron 3. They jumped to version 4, but it's still in beta, so there's no reason for us to upgrade. And whatever Electron I have now, I'm going to keep using. So there's docs, and in the docs area, you've got all the information on the API reference. The API for Electron allows you to control the windows and some of the other startup behavior and application level behavior, but everything that's going to happen inside of your application is going to either call one of these API calls to get the information it needs. For instance, in an Electron application, you can create multiple windowed applications that all talk to each other. You can create new windows, just like you would, say, if you're going to make like Photoshop or something. You could make a application that had many different views. And in fact, in Electron, it's also possible to build applications that exist in like the taskbar or in the utility tray, that kind of thing. So it also gives you access to like the keyboard and some touch features, just a bunch of stuff. Now this is all well and good and useful, and there's a debugger, and you can do this cross-platform and handles cross-platform PC applications, and there may be a way to use the source code in a similar way for iOS or Android. And there are other engines out there. There's Defold, and there's things like that you could look into if you wanted to build applications for mobile. But we're interested primarily in creating either a browser-based game or a game that you can play as a standalone application. However, because we are also building, so one end of the project of Pixitron is to build this Electron-based thing, but the other end of this series is that we're also going to be building a web application that does all of this stuff in the Chrome browser. So in one hand, you get Electron for your downloadable client, but on the other hand, you can just build the entire thing for the web. So we want to use as much, all of the JS that's shared between the Electron Pixitron project and then the just simply Pixie-based online web application project. That'll end up in Pixitron. So the JavaScript that handles, for instance, showing a game object or creating a window, all of that stuff is web-based technology, but and like the console controller style, controllers that are USB controllers, all that's going to be built into the Pixitron engine. But at the same time, I'm going to reuse that code to handle the same sort of interactivity and rendering and gameplay that will be in the web-based application that's also based on Pixie. So this is probably a good time to bring up Pixie. So this is Pixie JS version 4, and it's an HTML5 based 2D WebGL renderer. So you can do all sorts of cool shaders like you're seeing here, but at the same time, you can use this both on the web in Electron. You could use this really anywhere that web technologies are okay, like in PhoneGap and some of the other IDEs that let you do cross-platform stuff. They do have some examples. I've done a little bit with Pixie. I think what's great about Pixie is this, this little bunny example is like the simplest way to display a sprite and rotate it. And you can also, you have like a container, and you can create like, more complicated drawings. You've got, the ability to do a sprite sheet animation. So this is actually something that's pre-drawn in its rotation and rendered out to many different individual frames, and then those frames are placed into a sprite sheet which is then animated. So Real simple. I mean, you can see that the code here is only 40 lines to get this thing to display, and that's pretty awesome. Render to texture, so you've got off screen, so you've rendered once, copied off screen, and then rendered again. That's always useful. FBOs is the OpenGL concept there. Here you have textured meshes, so you can do some simpler style game graphics. And the point of picking Pixie over, say, 3.js or something like that is to keep it as simple as possible so we can focus really on the gameplay as Bill and I build out our game. And also we want to make it online multiplayer. So, here's an animated sprite. I mean, it has pretty much all the basic graphics capabilities that are needed to make a game. So Pixie's great on its own, and if I go in here and if I can locate exactly where I've got this source code, because it's been a little while since I've been working on this, I'm going to just use everything search to locate my Electron app. Okay. So I've got these files in this project in Atom. You can get Atom from atom.io. It's by the GitHub team. It's a great editor for handling JavaScript and CSS and HTML and Node. So it's really useful on that end. It also does C++, which is, I think what happens with Electron is that it builds your application into C++. So you'll see when I load up the Pixitron engine as a web page, it's not working. If I view the page source code, though, you can see it is the same basic file that you were seeing before. What's missing is the Electron part. So let's take a look at how that works. What that means for us as developers is that we're going to be able to extend Pixitron through some of our, JavaScript. But when we go to develop a web application to make a web game, which is our goal, we're going to be taking that stuff and putting it into a separate application that's being built in PHP with JavaScript. So PHP for the back end. Now, if we look here, we've got an engine file, and that's right here. And I'm just going to bring that over here so you can see we've got like the keyboard input is going to load up this interface, which is going to set all of our interface. And this could be loaded from something, or it could be, hand done. You can see here I'm grabbing on to the controllers for these various keys. So we're going to look up all of the keyboard commands and allow us to get direct keyboard input onto this. And then it establishes a keyboard function that is going to handle all of the keys down and up in one place. And that's one thing that I thought was important. It's not necessarily a part of Electron. It's not necessarily a part of Pixie, but to bring these two very different APIs that do a very different focus of things together allows us to even just use raw JavaScript to do a key up, key down here. So here, this particular code is just JavaScript, and we can move that to any other place. But in some cases, we're actually grabbing onto things that are specific to an API. So we've got, let's see. So this is an asset, but all this Pixitron quick start does right now is rotate a very large bunny, just like you saw in the Pixie JS example. So in package.json, this is where we're setting up the information about which version of Electron and what debugger and all this stuff. This was carefully put together from a variety of different docs I was reading at the time. Then we've got Pixie Display. This is a user extension that was written for Pixitron that allows you to get display information. I'm sorry, it's written for Pixie JS to get this extension information and get the canvas to be stretchable. So we've taken care of a lot of this already. It's already set up. You don't have to upgrade Electron. You don't have to upgrade Pixie. It's all in a pretty good spot. Now you'll see in a couple of places I say things like class. These are probably areas where I'm still working on things. I'm bringing stuff in from a C++ library that I have. So a lot of this isn't fully functioning and fully involved yet, but you can do this kind of thing in Node, so there's nothing wrong with that. Let's take a look at this in its original form, or in its compiled form rather, through Electron. So if I bounce around in here, you'll see that I do have a copy of Electron. Okay, and npm is how you install this. So you can get npm for Windows, and it'll get all the required Node modules and all of that. Then once we've got it going, you have to be able to build it. And so one way you can approach this is to go back to the Electron site and look at the quick start information. So there's get started, using the quick start guide. You'll want to go through this guide and build an application using npm. Then you install Electron into that application, and then you basically require Electron. You build up your browser window specification. You then can run your app, and you do that with npm start, and eventually you can actually compile it into a portable application. So let's just start up a shell. I'm going to use git bash. This comes with Git for Windows, so we're able to come in here, and you can see here that we've got a full screen application running. Your mouse cursor can leave the window, which is one caveat for the game, but it's a very nice window. Having done this natively in OpenGL for Windows, I mean, this is a very quick startup. I do have the dev tools open by default because I've decided to allow that. I can uncomment or comment out a single line of code that will allow me to get rid of that. So what the user would see is this, but of course it's a browser window. Now there are these scroll bars here, so I'm going to have to look into getting rid of the scroll bars, and there's no way to leave full window. Let me see if I can find quickly a gamepad. I have one. Yeah, I've got one right here. This is a iBuffalo classic USB game controller. And I'm just going to plug in the controller directly to my computer. Okay, so the device is plugged in now. And if I hit a button, you can see that now I have this little test thing up here. This is done with, I think, gamepad.js. And, this is just for testing out. You can see if I hit the right trigger, it's not a trigger, it's like the right corner button. I get 5 and 7, 4 and 6. So you can figure out what each controller is going to be treated as, and what the limits are there. You can see that when I hit a directional button, it actually generates both a button code and an XY on the gamepad. So through trial and error and trying out different devices, we can program different default settings for the controller. And this allows people to program for games. Right now the bunnies aren't being affected. There isn't a game here, but it is the beginning, and npm is your gateway to that development. Now there is a way to compile, there is a way to package, and there is a way to ship. So if I hit escape, I quit the application, and now we're back, and we're just going to go here. All right, let's take a look at npm install Node.js for Windows. All right, you go to download. You pick the Windows installer. NPM is included with it. Once you've got that installed, you can then use NPM to proceed with Electron. So if I go there, you can grab the 64-bit or whatever version you'd like. All right, well, I think that concludes our first tutorial, how to get started with Pixitron and Electron and Node.js on Windows. Thanks a lot. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, like and subscribe. There will be more videos coming that deal with more specific things in Pixie. So thanks for coming to the Retro Lab.